Welcome to the reading of the Sabbath School lesson for the second quarter of 2022. Welcome to lesson number 10 in the series on Genesis. It's titled Jacob Israel, ready for teaching on June 4, and I'm Percy Harrold. Thursday, June 2, the death of Rachel. Read Genesis chapter 35, verses 15 to 29. What other woes did Jacob face within his dysfunctional family? Let's read Genesis 35, beginning at verse 15. And Jacob called the name of the place where God spoke with him Bethel. Then they journeyed from Bethel, and when there was but a little distance to go to Ephrath, Rachel laboured in childbirth, and she had hard labour. Now it came to pass, when she was in hard labour, that the midwife said to her, Do not fear, you will have this son also. And so it was, as her soul was departing, for she died, that she called his name Ben-oni, but his father called him Benjamin. So Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephrath, that is, Bethlehem. And Jacob set a pillar on her grave, which is the pillar of Rachel's grave to this day. Then Israel journeyed and pitched his tent beyond the Tower of Eder. And it happened, when Israel dwelt in that land, that Reuben went and lay with Bilhah his father's concubine, and Israel heard about it. Now the sons of Jacob were 12. The sons of Leah were Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, and Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. The sons of Rachel were Joseph and Benjamin. The sons of Bilhah, Rachel's maidservant, were Dan and Naphtali. And the sons of Zilpah, Leah's maidservant, were Gad and Asher. These were the sons of Jacob who were born to him in Paddan Aram. Then Jacob came to his father Isaac at Mamre, or Ķeṛjath-arba, that is, Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac had dwelt. Now the days of Isaac were 180 years, so Isaac breathed his last and died, and was gathered to his people, being old and full of days, and his sons Esau and Jacob buried him. As soon as Jacob leaves Bethel, 3 interrelated incidents mark the last step of his journey toward the promised land. Jacob's last son is born, Rachel dies, and Reuben, Jacob's first son by Leah, sleeps with Jacob's concubine. Though the text doesn't say why the young man would do something so evil, it could have been that he wanted to somehow defile the birth of Jacob's last son and to humiliate the memory of Rachel. We just don't know. The birth of Jacob's last son is linked to Bethlehem, as we read in verse 19. So Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephrath, that is, Bethlehem, which is within the confines of the promised land. This birth is, then, the first fulfillment of God's promise for the future of Israel. The midwife prophetically addresses Rachel with the very words God used to reassure Abraham, Do not fear. We read that in verse 17, and we're going to compare that with Genesis 15, verse 1. After these things, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision, saying, Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your exceedingly great reward. Significantly, Jacob changes the name that the dying Rachel had given to her son, Ben-oni, meaning son of my sorrow, to signify her pain, into Benjamin, meaning son of the right hand, perhaps implying the direction of the south in order to express his hope in the promised land and all that God said he would do for his people after they had settled there. Yet, during this time, Reuben has sexual relations with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and Rachel's maidservant, as we read in Genesis 35:25. The sons of Bilhah, Rachel's maidservant, were Dan and Naphtali, and Genesis chapter 30 and verse 3. So she said, Here is my maid Bilhah, go in to her, and she will bear a child on my knees, that I also may have children by her. We just don't know why he performed this scandalous act, other than as another example of human depravity. Amazingly, Jacob does not respond to this horrible violation, even though he is told about it in verse 22. And it happened, when Israel dwelt in the land, that Reuben went and lay with Bilhah his father's concubine, and Israel heard about it. Perhaps at this point in his life, Jacob trusts that God will fulfill his word despite the sin and evil at times that goes on around him. It is this precise lesson of faith that is implied in the list of Jacob's 12 sons, who will be the ancestors of Israel, not the most savoury and kindest of people, as we will see. Genesis 35, verses 22 to 26. And it happened, when Israel dwelt in that land, that Reuben went and lay with Bilhah his father's concubine, and Israel heard about it. Now the sons of Jacob were 12. The sons of Leah were Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, and Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. The sons of Rachel were Joseph and Benjamin. The sons of Bilhah, Rachel's maidservant, were Dan and Naphtali. And the sons of Zilpah, Leah's maidservant, were Gad and Asher. These were the sons of Jacob, who were born to him in Paddan Aram. Yet, despite all the problems, all the dysfunction, even outright evil, such as Reuben's sin with Bilhah, God's will was going to be fulfilled through this family, no matter how messed up this family really was. And so to finish today, despite human error, God's ultimate purposes will be fulfilled. Imagine what would happen if people cooperated, if they obeyed him. How much more easily, that is, with less human suffering and stress and delay, could God's will then be accomplished. This lesson was read by Dr. Percy Harrold for Christian Services for the Blind. Sponsored by the Sabbath School Department and distributed through Hope Channel Australia, this podcast is also redistributed by Hope Channel Germany, Christian Record Services for the Blind, and It Is Written. It is also available on SoundCloud and through multiple podcast distributors, including Apple iTunes. Remember, God is always faithful.